In this video, we're going to see how do we bake a complicated high-res geometry inside of Marmoset, as well as looking through Substance Painter. So currently what I have is I have this high-res geometry inside of Maya, and this high-res geometry I'm going to bake it down to a low-res geometry, which looks, the final result looks something like this. So I'll be going through the process of doing this. So if you guys haven't watched the previous videos for baking, I would highly recommend you guys to do that. So let's get started. So I have this high-res complex geometry, and this is a pretty simple geometry, to say the least. And I have this low-res geometry just wrapped around top of it. Now the idea here is to sort of bake all these details that are there on top of this low-res geometry using Marmoset. So Marmoset, there are some things that are easier to do, and that's why we're going to use Marmoset. And I'm also going to show you guys a trick to bake it faster or to avoid certain steps. So what I have over here is, so if you guys seen the previous videos, I spoke about the principles of baking, understanding the mesh display options, or we would call it as smoothing groups inside of Maya. And the second thing is we talk about UV sets and also or baker settings. Right. So I'll come into this low-res geometry, and what I have currently is I already set up the UVs, but I'll redo this sort of setup. So let's duplicate this mesh, delete this guy, and redo this UV part. So this is coming, and this is a very basic UV. In fact, there's nothing much to it except for straightening it out, but I'll still delete it eventually. Sorry, not the mesh, but the UV. So I'll come in with this UV, and I'll come into UV planar map from this guy. So that's what planar map, all of that. Take all of them, take all of these values, and that should take all of these guys, and I'll planar map these guys as well. So that should give me that mesh. Next up, I'll planar map these guys. So this is the UV of this part. Now what I get is I get this couple of UV shells. So I'll just go into hide my outliner, and I'm going to take this guy outside. So this will be my first. This is my outside. That's the behind part. This is red in color. So if you guys see the name will be flipped. So I want to flip this guy to flip along U. So flip that UV. Next up is I want to take up this geometry, right? So I'm going to just unfold along V. V means vertical, U means horizontal. Since I don't want to unfold this horizontally, I want to unfold this vertically. So that should be a straight line. Do the same thing for this particular geometry. Unfold along V, take that as a straight line. Now the issue here comes when, even though we select all of them and we lay out as per what we think is needed, even if we make sure our layout has the same textile density. I'm not going to talk much of textile density. Maybe I'll keep that for another video. Ideally, I want to sort of use up my UV space as much as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into these guys, and I'm going to cut it by half. Right, so I'm going to cut this guy, and maybe I'm going to cut this guy on top. And so this should cut both these edges, thus splitting out my UV shell. Okay, now this layout, and let's start seeing this. So it's still slightly better. It can still become more better, and I'll do that by cutting out these UVs. So I'm only technically doing this so that my layouts are more precise, and I waste lesser space in terms of layout. And I'll come in and I'll straighten these guys out. So I'll come into these pieces. I'll just stack these guys around here. So right click, shift right click, stack, shift right click, stack. I'm just going to rotate these guys and come to these UVs, and I'm going to rotate it manually. Right, same thing I'm going to do for this one. It doesn't matter whether you do it up or down. What matters is how you do it, right? How you straighten it. So this should be more than enough. I'll take my UVs, I'll scale it up on this side. Same thing for this part, scale it up, scale. And now what I get is, now I should unfold this in horizontal, and I should unfold this in vertical. So I should get a pretty decent UV, and I'm just going to scale these two corners to match the UVs, match the corners, and that should be it. So select these guys. Now what you can also do is you can select both of these UV shells, shift right click, and you can come to this match UVs, right? And that will match them up, right? So I'll do is I'll just rotate these guys slightly around here, and you get some minor distortion, but that's fine, right? It's not a big deal. So I'll just take all of these guys that are on the left hand side, I'll just lay them out if I feel like. Yep. So that's better layout, and just gonna rescale these guys. So right, so right now my normals are pretty much if I have to reset my normals, set the face, ideally I want to select all of my UV borders, and I would like to come into these guys and say, alright, these are going to be my hard edges. So mesh display hardened edge, and I'm going to shift and left click and select all of these guys and say this should be my soften edge, right? So then my UV becomes slightly more nicer. What I can do is I can also select and I can apply a blend material or a fog material, just so that I can look at the shininess of it. I can see these reflections are very smooth and those guys are very harsh. That's fine. Okay, so let's take this to Homeset and let's see the bake. So what I'll do is I'll just hide this guy. I'll just create a new file so it's easier to see, and file. So this is my completely new scene. I'll import my low-res model. So before that, in Maya I need to export it out. So select this. This is my low-res model. File, export selection. And come into the one above. Just come to my folders. Alright, so I'll come into this guy and I'll say it's my low res model 01. Alright, so file, import model. Oops, wrong place. Cool. So I have this demo model all ready to bake. And I'm just gonna delete all these default ones. And as for my sky, I'm going to change the sky to either lens end, so that's a pretty decent neutral lighting. Maybe increase the brightness slightly. Cool. So I have this low res. Now let's import my high res. So I already exported that out. So I already have this high complicated mesh. It looks something like this, and I'm going to bake this guy. So what I'll do is I'll come to my Homeset and I'll click on this new baker. This should create a baking group. I'm going to drag this high res inside my high res, low res inside my low res, and come to my baker. Normal map is ticked on. This is a 2K map that I'm baking. My smooth gauge. So this is where we check, just like in Substance Painter we would check. In Substance Painter we check, for example, in our big mesh maps, we come to average normals. This is similar to the average normals for the baker itself on how the gauge looks like. So if you see this, and if we expand this out, we can see our average normals look like this, and this is the average cage. So eventually what this smooth cage does is it changes how this cage looks like, right? So for example, if we had switched this off, or similar to Substance Painter where average normals is off, you see now this space, there's a gap in between, and because of this gap, this area is missed out in the bake. But we're not going to change that. We're going to just make sure that this is on, and we switch off our high res, and then we preview, and there's our bake. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward to start with. Now let's start tweaking these values in. Okay, so this all should work generally fine. I'm not sure why that is an issue, but these generally all of this should work okay, should be fine. Now for these skewed parts, we can come down to low res, paint skew map. I mean, we can literally paint out the offset around here. Right now there is an issue around here. I'll try to fix this later, and that issue is because of, you can see the shadow around this part, and if you come to our high res geometry, if we see how does it look like, come to our high res geometry. In our high res geometry, it looks like this, right? The shadow on top, shadow bottom, but here we can see only the shadow only on the top. So we can fix this, but before that, I'm just going to show you what this coming to our low res geometry and painting skew maps help in. This is similar to changing it or baking it twice inside Substance. If I paint it here you'll see the average normals are like 90 degrees, right? So that will help us bake this guy out. So I'll bake that, so straighten that out, so you can see that's going to straighten out, and I'm going to do this on all of them, all these stems. It's almost done. There you go. Cool. Let me start one on the inside. Alright, so once I click done, now this bigger settings, then what I see is this is my low res geometry. That's pretty decent. Alright, if I move my maps, if I move my lighting, you can see that this is all baked in, baked into my low res geometry. And if I want to preview this, I can come to my bigger one, and I can preview this material, and that's on a normal map. Alright, so now let's try to solve this average guy. So I'm going to do a trick over here. Is I know that's my high res geometry. I'll come to this low res geometry, and I'm going to unisolate this one, and I'm going to say, alright, so what I want to do is I want to sort of make sure that there are enough subdivisions that when I bake, these guys don't skew, right? So what's actually happening here is this normals, if I look at my normals around here, you can actually see these normals tapering down, and that's happening because of how my edge loops are. I don't have that many edge loops around this mesh. So what I can do is I can actually divide this guy and then change or replace this guy again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to Maya, I'm going to duplicate this geometry, and I'm going to call this my fake high res part. And what I'm going to do is, just because this gap is too big, I'm going to come in, and these are all, this actually is soften edged. Let's try to change that a bit. So I'm just going to view my normals. So I'm going to come to my normals. This is my vertex normal. Just change the size. It's too big. Cool. So I can see that this is straight out, right? It's not going to do us any harm. Only if this was average, then it will do us some harm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my multicut tool, and I'm going to multicut this a couple of times. Right, same thing around this part, this part, this part, and this part. Cool. So I'm going to export this mesh out, and I'm going to call this my low res, but it's kind of like my high res. This is like a cheat, right? I forgot to do it on the other side. Let's do it roughly the same. Cool. Alright, so that's done. And now I'm going to export this guy out. Same UVs, same everything. I'm just going to export this out as low edge demo, the low res one. And I'm going to get this guy, this low res mesh. I'm going to select this low edge, low res demo. So you can see here the subdivisions are a lot, but it's still maintaining the same ones. And what I'll do is I'm going to bake this guy now. It's big. So what you see now, you can see the big difference in that big. So earlier you can see the skew, and now you cannot see the skew, and that fixes most of the parts. So once this is done, you can see this is added some multi-cuts. What I can do is I can come to the low res, come back, and I can say, okay, now what I want you to do is I want to read the previous low res, and then I just want you to preview the file on this, and there you go. So now you have this low res file with the bake of the previous low res file. And the good thing about Marmoset is Marmoset still maintains that paint map, right? So that's how we do it in Marmoset. There will be some errors where you guys may have to come in and repaint some areas. So you can see that, oh, this is quite blurred out in some of them. Only these corners usually have this issue, but most of them are usually okay. Yeah, it's only these corners that are curvy parts get this issue, but that's fine. You can always repaint that. Alright, so that's it as far as coming to understand Marmoset. To do this in Substance, it's sort of the same concept, so let's go through that. So I'll create a file, new. I'll use the same files, so I'll come in and I'll use this low res demo file, and I'm gonna, since this works with this high res one, I'm just gonna start with the high res one so that I save some time in baking. And let's see this one. So I'm gonna come to bake mesh maps, none, normal, 1K, just for this is my high res complex. Increase the frontal distance a bit, max rear distance, average normals are on, the bake is working, and let's see. Right, so we got this result, and of course, because the edge loops are quite a lot, and we can see that it's working pretty okay. Now what you're going to do is replace this geometry. So edit, project configuration, replace this with our low res demo, and click OK, and there we have it. So there we have some errors around here which you can always fix by rebaking those guys in, and just like I showed you guys last time in Substance Painter to Photoshop. In Photoshop, where you go in and bake those guys out or export it out. So for example, here I like these edges, so I'm going to come into File, Export Textures, change this location to SS location. Let's go back to Substance Painter, Complex 1, maps. Right, cool. So these are the actually, you know what, I'm just going to come in and change this one, rebake this one. This one is okay. Export this guy out. So that should give you that result. And now come into your project configuration, get this low res demo in, alright, and take this guy. And it should not work because I can do it this way. I can go to Photoshop. I only have these meshes around here. I can come here and I can say these are the nice edges, so I can get it inside Substance Painter and see what's happening. So I can create on a new layer a null map, only a null map, and what that's going to do is come to normal, change this to normal, come here, change this to be place, and then the last thing is to change this to a OpenGL, so that should read perfectly fine. Now these guys, so these are the edges. Then I have another layer that's for the flats. So flats are the ones that is a big mesh maps, which is this guy. So let's come to our project, normal from big mesh maps. Let's come to a normal map. Let's put this one, same thing, OpenGL, change this to normal, so that should be correct. So these are the flats, the correct ones, and all you need to do is paint a black mask and say, alright, so now I want you to add in a paint layer and paint it white. So you see, yeah, it's actually fine. I'm not sure why inside Photoshop it was weird. This is similar to Marmoset style doing it. I believe that's what I did inside Photoshop, but I must have done something wrong. But here you go, perfectly fine. So paint it out. Paint out the ones that are skewed, and that should solve it. Troubleshooting is always fun. Alright, there you go. And from here, what we can do is, we don't need this big mesh maps. Actually, this should be something like this. So I have just painted this one, and what we have now is our new null map painted in from these guys. And by right, that should be pretty. Oh, alright. Oh, it's getting cancelled from here. No wonder. I was wondering why is it getting cancelled. And this should be perfectly fine. So then this will be a new null map. So we export this out. So we can delete all of these guys and say, you know, this is the null map. This is our correct one. We get this inside. It seems like a lot of work, but ideally this should be fine. Get this with texture, correct it, combine null maps, and then you don't need those guys. You can big mesh maps from all except ambient occlusion, thickness, ID, switch off all these guys, and then big. So what you get is, you get all the information from the null map. Right, so that should be it. Cool. So hopefully you guys learn how to bake from Marmoset, as well as inside Substance Painter with a complicated mesh which has some indents around here. Ideally, of course, you would change the silhouette of this, but for now this should be fine. Okay, so the next video I'll go through maybe a bit more complicated, and hopefully by then you guys understand enough baking to bake almost any object. Okay, see you around. Bye.